Buenas amigos, ¿cómo dicen que les va? Bienvenidos a un nuevo video. En esta ocasión vamos a estar explorando los orígenes de la vida en una nueva experiencia de realidad virtual. ¿De dónde venimos? ¿De dónde vienen los seres vivos, las plantas, los animales, los hongos? Venimos de una sopa de moléculas, tal vez de un puchero de moléculas, un guiso de moléculas. Lo vamos a estar descubriendo el día de hoy. Déjenme un segundito que me coloco esto. Y nos vamos acá a la TV. Allá vamos nomás. Atlantic Productions. Yo esto lo estoy viendo en 3D, gente. 360 y 3D al mismo tiempo.
On a fantastic journey to look for the origins of life. It will be a journey full of wonders. Using the latest technology, it's possible to bring to life the very first living creatures that appeared on the planet. For the first time in half a billion years.
2 millones de años.
Around 2 million years ago. The dinosaurs were wiped out 66 million years ago.
Los dinosaurios estuvieron hace 66 millones.
Complex multicellular organisms arrived around 550.
Las primeras células complejas hace 500 y pico de millones.
3.5 billion years after the formation of the Earth, all that existed here were microscopic single-celled organisms.
Billones de años.
The planet was very different from the one we know today. The early continents had only just solidified. The land was volcanic, dry and lifeless. But deep in the oceans, life.
Acá está comentando que así era la Tierra cuando nació Mirta Legrand. Este es el parto de Mirta Legrand.
There were single-celled organisms.
Impresionante.
For millions of years, changed, but slowly oxygen levels in the Earth's oceans began to rise, and that had a profound effect on the development of life. Cells began to stick together, forming clumps, some of which would eventually evolve into the complex animals we know today. These clumps of cells were held together by strands of a new protein, collagen.
Colágeno.
It's sometimes called the sticky tape of the animal world. It's the most common protein in
La
our
cinta
bodies.
pegajosa, le decía.
Collagen enabled cells to stick together. The advantages of being multicelled were many. Clumps of cells could collect food more effectively. They could control the internal workings of their bodies.
Ok, acá dice que el colágeno hace que se peguen las células.
It was the beginning of complex life.
Era el principio de la vida compleja. A ver, un segundito que se me están tocando acá los
Millions of years
botones.
later, life had evolved far beyond its infancy as simple clumps of cells into considerably more complex forms. Charnia was a member of a community of creatures that lived at the bottom of the ocean 550 million years ago.
Charnia era un ser vivo que vivió en el fondo del océano hace 550 millones de
This
años.
strange leaf-shaped organism is the oldest large multicellular creature we know of. Anchored to the
Es el
seafloor,
ser más grande
well out of the reach of
multicelular
light,
conocido.
they grew up to 6
Más
feet,
viejo.
2 meters tall. Having such a simple body plan came at a heavy price. Just a few million years after they first evolved, they vanished. An evolutionary dead end.
O sea, el primer ser vivo posiblemente haya sido esa alga. O el primer
Just
ser
as
vivo
Charnia was
grande.
dying out, new creatures appeared that were constructed in a completely different and more complex way. And they were able to take a new and crucial step. They began to move. The first animal movements were undoubtedly slow, perhaps even too slow to notice. Dickinsonia crept about, feeding on the organic matter on the seafloor beneath it. Perhaps it moved with the help of hundreds of tiny tubular feet, as starfish do today.
¿Estos qué son?
Kimberella
Michi.
was an early ancestor of the mollusks. It probably had a single muscular foot, just as snails and slugs have, with which it pulled itself along the sea bottom.
Bicho.
Sprigina was the first animal we know of with a head at one end and a tail at the other, and between a body with two identical halves, were it to be split down the middle. But once animals developed mouths and the ability to move, evolution took off. Just a few million years later, an evolutionary blink of the eye, these animals so rapidly that life seemed to have exploded into a multitude of new forms.
Ok, pocos millones de años
Animals
después,
increased in numbers, diversity, and size
la evolución
as
se aceleró.
Suddenly, the oceans were teeming with life.
Hola, bonito.
Pikaia was a tiny worm-like animal, but it had something new. The beginnings of a
Yo les traduzco, este es
It,
el
or
primer
something like it, was the
dildo
ancestor of
acuático
all
de la
vertebrates.
historia. Wow, ¿y ese bicho qué onda? Parece de
And
Star
here
Wars.
is Opabinia, an animal so bizarre it looked like an unusually bold evolutionary experiment. The flaps along its side enabled it to propel itself forward. It had 5 eyes to search for food,
Cinco
and a
ojos.
strange trunk with which to collect it.
Y una trompa para comer.
Wiwaxia, once thought to be an ancestor of earthworms, is now believed to have been an early snail with a spiked protective shell.
Este tenía como una carcasa, un escudo.
Hallucigenia was even stranger.
¿Alucigenia? ¿Cuál es?
Its spikes were probably defensive, for now they were predator-round.
Son estos los alucigenia. Lo que no entiendo de estos bichos no se encontró huesos.
Anomalocaris may have been an ambush hunter waiting in concealment to grab unsuspecting prey.
Corre, amigo. No.
It could grow to over a meter, several feet in length. It was, as far as we know, the first big predator on Earth.
El primer gran depredador de la Tierra. ¿Sabe cómo lo hacemos a la parrilla ahora?
Creatures now needed to be able to defend themselves. Ammonites, relatives of today's squid and octopi, evolved shells.
Este es el antepasado de los pulpos. Y de los... ¿cómo se llama? Calamares.
Other creatures evolved hard, jointed plates that encased their entire bodies, an exoskeleton.
Este tiene un exoesqueleto.
This innovation led to some of the most successful creatures in the history of life, the arthropods.
¿Cómo se llama? Arthropods.
These are called trilobites. Their exoskeletons made them very successful, and they colonized all kinds of different habitats, just as modern arthropods do today.
De estos creo que sí hay.
So far, we have discovered
Huesos, ¿no?
about 17,500 different trilobite species,
Sí.
and they came in a whole variety of different shapes.
Estos son los que aparecen en las baldosas. Creo que en la baldosa de la casa de mi abuela aparece uno de estos bichos.
Sizes.
Y Mirta Legrande creo que lo tenía de mascota.
Trilobites were, without question, the most successful animals of their time. Today, the trilobites are extinct, but in their heyday, the continued evolution of their exoskeleton enabled their arthropod cousins to dominate the oceans. Then, 450 million years ago, some arthropods appeared that were truly giants.
Aparecieron unos anthropods realmente grandes. ¿Dónde está? No lo veo. ¿Qué pasó? Ahí va.
Sea scorpions were the top predators.
Los escorpiones
They were the
del mar,
biggest
del
arthropod
océano.
that has ever existed. And they could
Uy, se me está colgando esto. YouTube.
grow up to 2.5 meters, 8 feet in length. The fundamental features of modern animals.
Lo que más me flasha de todo esto es que es 360 y 3D al mismo tiempo.
The arthropods were the great pioneers.
450
In the
millones
oceans,
de años atrás.
life had begun. But the land remained barren and without animals.
Dale, vieja, ¿qué le pasa al internet?
Kind. But there was food there. Simple plants. And that tempted some animals to venture out.
¿Existía el lag también hace 450 millones de años?
Life wouldn't colonize the land for another 100 million years.
Acá es cuando llegamos a colonizar la Tierra, Dios, cuando salimos del mar. Creo que era como un lagarto, ¿no? Ah, pero no te muestran la colonización de la Tierra. Veamos otra experiencia. A ver, algo con dinosaurios. A ver este. Ah, este me encantó. Este 360 del espacio, una locura. Una locura. Este era el primer video que vi así 360 3D. Y el único que había en un momento, pero ahora se ve que ya hay más.
Is it worth it to risk your life into space? I think not only is it worth it, but it's indispensable that we do.
The things that are the highest risk are the things that we get the best training on. Our training for spacewalks is excellent. It's a good thing because it's the most dangerous thing we do.
Qué raro que son los cigarros en el espacio, viejo. Un filtro largo.
We take every one of these spacewalks like it's our first time out the door. Clinging on with our hands in a safety tether. It's a big deal, and so it deserves our respect every time.
Dale, salgan afuera. Quiero ver cómo salen afuera filmado en 360. No, no creo que salgan afuera y lo filmen. Re peligroso. Bueno, ese ya está flasheando. Dice que van a modificar genéticamente a los humanos para que viajen por el espacio. Anda, dale. Hippie espacial. Ah. Muchas conspiraciones de YouTube. No puedo creer que existan boluditos que dicen que la Tierra es plana y ya los astronautas están diciendo que se van a modificar genéticamente para adaptarse mejor al espacio. Esto es 360, ¿no? No. No, a mí me copa lo 360. A ver. Vamos a buscar algo con dinosaurios. Dino. Lost Ecosphere. Micro Monsters. Me ceba Micro Monster, a ver. Wow. Allá vamos. Se ve muy bien, tiene muy buena definición. Los grandes creadores. Mighty. ¿Qué es Mighty? Ok, planeta Tierra.
If you ever thought that animals with superpowers were the stuff of science fiction, it's time to think again. Because planet Earth is full of them. In the skies, in the trees, and in the undergrowth.
Este no es 360, 180. Pero claro, por eso tiene mejor definición.
We may not notice them, but there are more bugs in a single square mile of forest than there are human beings on Earth.
Acá acaba de volar un poquito, dice que hay más gusanos adentro de una milla. No sé cuánto es una milla, 1 kilómetro y pico, menos de 1 kilómetro, no lo sé, que humanos en la Tierra.
And their amazing abilities have to be seen to be believed.
No sé si dijo gusanos o insectos.
Some fire clouds of boiling chemicals.
Wow, no lo había visto, se recamufla. A ver,
Creatures can
bueno, no
glow in
importa.
the dark.
No vi la mantis, estaba
Make
recamuflado.
themselves invisible. And even transform themselves into something completely different.
Eso qué mierda.
Welcome to a world whose inhabitants are even stranger than our fictions.
Dice que... ¡Uy! ¡Wow! Esta imagen. ¿Esto es un video o es 3D?
Our planet is home to over 1 million species of arthropods.
¿Qué era eso? ¿Una
In the
filmación?
rainforests of Australia, green ants live in groups of up to 500,000.
Es un
Un
video, wow. Esto es de verdad. ¿O no?
This is a family of green ants. These ants work together to build a home.
No entiendo si...
They're superb acrobats and
Porque se
can
ve en
stand
3D
on each
esto.
other's backs to make living bridges. To stick these leaves together, they use their own super glue.
A ver si tiene subtítulos esto. Un segundo. No. Este me gustaría mostrárselo a mi abuela.
The white bundles these adult ants are carrying are babies or larvae. And only larvae have the ability to produce the glue that the adults need.
Wow, se ve muy bien, gente. Esto la verdad que me está impresionando, ¿eh?
The adults must first tickle them with their antennae.
Al principio pensé que estaba hecho en 3D por la definición que tiene. Es increíble esto, gente. Se ve muy bien.
Then it's time for a spot of super strength.
Claro, tiene super fuerza.
A single colony can build hundreds of nests like this. After all, every super team needs a base.
Cada gran equipo, cada super equipo necesita una base. Ahí hay una que murió, me parece.
Most ant colonies thrive because their members have a variety of skills. But what if you could multiply yourself without finding a mate and produce billions of young in a single summer?
Uy, para, a ver. ¿Escucharon eso? Dice que este bicho se puede reproducir sin necesidad de pareja. Esa no la tenía. O sea, conozco la reproducción asexual, ¿no? Pero no. ¡Wow! ¡Qué loco! No sabía que había un bicho asexual. A ver.
A female aphid can do just that. She can produce live young without a male.
Wow.
And all are exact genetic copies of herself.
¡Mami!
She can produce more than 10 clones every day.
Dice que puede producir más de 10
with its
clones
own
por día.
babies developing within it,
Wow.
even before they're born.
Eso no lo sabía, che.
Their aim is to colonize as many of the neighboring plants as possible. By the end of the summer, one female may have spawned an army of as many as 600 billion genetically identical aphids. But as winter approaches, the plants die. Without their food supply, the aphid army is soon wiped out. Though not for long. As it grows cold, aphids stop producing live young and start producing eggs. Because eggs can survive the cold.
Dice que los huevos no pueden sobrevivir el frío.
The eggs will hatch and the cycle will start all over again. And then, once again, the aphid population will explode.
Qué increíble, gente. Lo que es la naturaleza, ¿no? Veamos otro de insectos, a ver. Lo que es la naturaleza. La puerta trampa. El duelo al amanecer. What? Esto, claro, como es 180 grados nomás, les permite tener una definición de imagen mucho mejor, ¿no? Planet Earth.
If you ever thought that animals with superpowers were the stuff of science fiction,
Esto es la intro.
it's time to think again. The undergrowth again. Because planet Earth is full of them. In the sky,
Dale.
in the trees, and in the undergrowth, superpowered creatures are all around us.
Las criaturas superpoderosas están por todas partes.
We may not notice them, but there are more bugs in a single square mile of forest than there are human beings on Earth.
Ah, sí, dice bug, dice
And their amazing
gusano. Lo había traducido bien.
seem to be believed. Some fire clouds of boiling chemicals. Creatures can glow in the dark.
Criaturas que brillan en la oscuridad.
Make themselves invisible.
Se hacen invisibles.
And even transform themselves into something completely different. Welcome to a world whose inhabitants are even stranger than our fictions.
Wow.
Our planet's rainforests are home to millions of animal species. And they're all searching for food. This is Scolopendra, an armor-plated, meat-eating centipede that can be a foot long.
Centípedo.
And extremely fast on its many pairs of legs.
Muy rápido, dice que.
One pair have been turned into deadly, venomous pincers, the only animal on the planet with fangs for legs.
Este dice que es venenoso.
Today, it's up against a red-claw scorpion. The scorpion may be slower than the centipede, but its pinching power.
Dice que es más lento que el 100 pies.
If it was the size of a grown man, it could crush a 7-ton truck in its pincers.
Pero claro, es más grosso, es mucho más fuerte.
And it packs a dangerous sting in its tail.
Y tiene un poderoso pinche en la cola.
Scorpion and centipede hunt the same prey in the same territory.
Dice que cazan las mismas animales.
Competition.
Cazan las mismas presas. Por eso pelean. Y la gana el escorpión, ¿o no? Yo apuesto por el escorpión.
The centipede desperately tries to stab its jaws between the scorpion's armor plates.
Escorpión. Escorpión. Dale que te aposté 5 lucas.
But it's no use.
Y no. Tómatela. Muerto.
The scorpion's pincers make light work of the centipede's body armor.
Igual este es venenoso, no te lo comas, escorpión, no seas boludo.
If you can't defend yourself down here, you're not likely to stay alive for very long. But tomorrow's battle may be a different story. The moonlight reveals that the scorpion has another superpower.
La luna revela que el escorpión tiene otro superpoder.
And he isn't looking for food.
No está buscando comida.
He's looking for a mate.
Está buscando un compañero. O compañera. No
The
sé.
problem is how to find her in the dark.
El problema es cómo encontrarla en la oscuridad. Ah, este es el que brilla.
Scorpions glow under ultraviolet light,
Wow. Wow.
which means that they may be able to see each other by the light of the moon.
Con la luz de la luna brilla.
Pincer in Pincer is a wonderful night for a moon dance. This tango allows the female to test her partner's strength, to be sure that he's up to the job.
Un tango
as
le
a
pusieron.
suitable mate. If successful, the dance will end with the production of the next generation of scorpions.
Si lo logran, van a crear la próxima generación de escorpiones. Bueno, people, espero que les haya copado. El video anterior que hice era de las Torres Gemelas. Puse el mouse todo el tiempo en la pantalla, la recagué con eso, pero bueno, estoy aprendiendo. Estamos aprendiendo a ser streamers.